everyone, I am Kaya. I'm one of the faces behind Regardless of, and today I'm going to be chatting with Laurin Thorne, who is a Canadian triathlete, and she suffered from athlete burnout, and she's going to tell us a bit about her story. Hey Laurin, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your project. I think it's such a cool idea with the empowerment that you have behind this.
Thank you. So, could you tell us a little bit about yourself briefly? What I know is that you are a triathlete, you're a student, you're a model. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the list?
That's pretty much the sum of it, I guess. So I'm currently in like my 5th year of university right now. I'm doing a major in economics, and in the sport side of things, I have been in Victoria for 5 years now, training with the National Performance Center, originally from Calgary. And I'm trying to think, I haven't been doing triathlon too long in the grand scheme of things. I guess this is maybe my 6th year kind of really doing it. I grew up as a competitive swimmer and a track runner. And by the end of my kind of grade 12 year, I decided that if I wanted to kind of be more successful and try to do triathlon, I should maybe try a triathlon team. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
trained with the little one for a bit, and just based off how I raced in some summer races, I was asked to come to Victoria. They had a spot in the center. Took them up on it and moved here. And that's honestly what brought me here. Something like pretty simple in that regard.
That's great. Yeah. So, who are you? What's your team right now? Is it through the university or is it through a separate organization?
Yeah, so it's actually just Triathlon Canada as a whole. So it's not a part of school. It's its own organization. The main setup is here in Victoria, but then there are athletes who do also race for Team Canada who are scattered around the country. But the main base is just right here.
Okay, that's super cool. So, did you have much experience with triathlon before you came to Victoria? Like, what was the time span of that you started doing triathlon and then decided to sort of pursue it further?
So I was a bit lucky that from a very young age, my parents actually participated in Ironmans, which is a very, very long triathlon. So they just kind of would put my sister and I in the local races. So that's kind of how I had the early exposure into what triathlon even was. When I was 5, I was put in a swim club, and I stayed in there for about 11 years. And then during that time, just through school, I decided to do some cross country, some track running. And in some early races, I noticed I had a very just natural ability to run, honestly, based off of swim fitness. So then I kind of, asked my parents if maybe I could join an actual like running team. So then I was about 12 or 13 when I joined that. So then through the rest of the time, I just stayed as a swimmer and as a runner. So with triathlon, we have this thing called the junior series, which is about ages 16 to 19. And pretty much you can just go race. The races are held over Canada, and you can just show up and go. And I was racing those based off of swimming and running. Never biked. I had no idea what to do with biking. I just kind of figured my way around that. And based off how I did on those is how I was asked to come to the center in Victoria, because they're like, oh, like some promise there. Let's see if this person can actually maybe bike a little bit better.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
that's kind of the story.
Nice. So you kind of got into it because of your parents, would you say? Were they doing triathlon before you started?
Yes, yeah. So I still remember as like very young, and I'd be running across the finish line from my parents' their Ironmans, just some like little pictures. So they were
Oh,
into that before I ever did my first one.
Oh, that's super fun. Yeah, I personally am not a huge runner or swimmer. I used to do track when I was younger, but I was mostly a sprinter. I wouldn't say I have the best endurance, but that's really cool that that's where you kind of found your passion and everything. I've only started running again recently during quarantine. Um, but yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so um, when you came to Victoria, is that when you started competing more in higher level events? I've seen that you have gotten to travel a little bit with triathlon. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So when I came to Victoria, I was still in kind of the junior series, ages 16 to 19. So I kind of finished off that. Most of those races are within Canada at that time, a lot of the States as well. So I was kind of just staying in North America. I've traveled outside like a little bit. I've had the unfortunate opportunities of many injuries and illnesses that have set me back a lot, which I've missed out on a lot of different types of traveling. But hopefully those will come, maybe not this summer, but the following ones. So it's been pretty like homeland, just Canada, the States, pretty easy really.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, so part of the reason we are chatting today is to talk about your experience with athlete burnout. So can you tell us what exactly that is?
So it's a great question. Athlete burnout, it's not, I would say there's not one like direct definition to what it is. There are multiple playing parts within it. So, I mean, just hearing the word athlete burnout, the word burnout, something must be done. You must have, you could be overtraining, it could be mental. So there's the mental side of it where things come up where maybe you don't get fulfilled by the sport anymore and you just don't want anything to do with it. Like that happens a lot. There are also things where maybe you haven't performed to the standards that you think you have after like year after year after year, and you're just kind of sick of it. There are times where maybe something else in your life comes up that's more important. You find a different sport, maybe your work or school gets more involved, and that kind of takes you away. So that's the mental piece of athlete burnout. I was in the physical aspect of it, where you are training, but your body is not able to cooperate. And it's interesting with triathlon, it's very common because of how much of an endurance sport it is. And, I'm trained where, my team is told that we're never going to feel good maybe until we taper for a race, because we just always are loading and loading and building on the fatigue that we have. So it's normal to kind of wake up and feel terrible most of the days. So it's hard to sometimes recognize the line between, am I just normally tired, or if there's something that's a little more serious. And that was actually what happened with me a little bit, but it was a little bit more substantial. So I went in this period, it was almost about a year ago actually. It happened in June last summer. And at the time I was at my the fittest I've ever been, putting out times that have never been seen before, setting myself up really, really good for the summer to come. And within 24 hours, I went from doing an amazing workout to waking up the next morning and not being able to function, just feeling really, really off. I remember that morning actually quite well. I had just a 30-minute shakeout run in the morning, and I struggled so much to get through it. It was really, really bizarre. Of course, I kind of just put it off like, oh, I'm tired. Big week of training, makes sense. Later that day, I just had an easy aerobic bike as well. And I pretty much rode with my head down, just grueling, just trying to get through it. Um, and, I kind of was like, this is interesting. This kind of came out of nowhere, but, tomorrow's another day. I'll move on. like didn't think too much about it. And this kind of persisted for the next 2 weeks. So I kept just thinking like, this is normal fatigue, but it got to the point where I was in so much pain from doing nothing. Like if I even had an easy couple days, I'd wake up and I was like, why does my body feel like it's burning a little bit? And the point where I decided to take a step back was when I was just doing a very, very easy kind of flush out swim. And I ended up getting out of the practice because I just I couldn't do it. Like I was in so much pain. It was just exhausting me to the point that I just knew something was wrong. So at that point, I was getting a little kind of uneasy of what this was. So my initial thought was that I was sick a year ago, and that virus stays active in the body for about a year. So I was wondering if maybe I like reactivated it or something. So I just was like, all right, I'll take 3 weeks. I went home and I was hoping that maybe this time my body will be good. It just needs a little step back. So after 3 weeks, unfortunately, I missed some races in that period, but it was very, very necessary. And then I came back to Victoria and I told my coach, I think I'm good to go. So he put me into a week of training, nothing intense, just let's see how I react. At the end of the week, I just got hit so bad again with the fatigue and just the body pain, and I had to stop again. And this time it was a lot worse. So I definitely did something that my body was not happy with, and that's when I was like, this is bigger than what I think it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what would you say your day-to-day schedule was between school and training, and how did that change over that period?
Definitely changed a lot. So while school is going on, just a normal day is to always block 2 sessions in the morning. I would go to school, come back for another session, and then probably just do some more schooling in the evening, night classes. So days very, very booked, always moving, have to be very planned, on top of organization and time management. So going from something that is very packed in your day, always moving, a lot of interactions, to completely stop training. I wasn't doing any summer courses or work in the summer, so I had nothing on my plate, which was a very, very dramatic change. And during the time of when my body was not cooperating, my mentality wasn't great. That whole year I had been dealing with some depression as well, and during this time definitely did not make it any better. So it was a messy period. I wanted to self-isolate. I didn't want anyone to talk to me. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was busy just trying to find an answer to what was going on. I had been seeing doctors, just being test me for everything. There has to be something in the blood, there has to be something wrong. I would just not leave until I would find an answer, but everything came back very normally, actually. So then I got to the point where they were saying I could be having fibromyalgia, which is something that actually can't be directly diagnosed. It's just based off symptoms. So that was kind of what I was going off of for a few months. When I was able to finally get in to see my sport doctor, he was saying athlete burnout. There's nothing you can really do. You just have to wait and see if your body will ever let you do this again, ever let you train. So it was just kind of a big waiting period. I think I ended up taking 4 months completely off until trying to train again.
Wow. So, what was the timeline with the triathlon season? How did that sort of coincide?
Unfortunately, it was right in the middle of it. So I guess the season can go from anywhere from like end of February up until September about. So by the time I had these like body symptoms, I had already raced maybe 3 times. And then I had a big Europe trip planned, some more domestic races. And unfortunately, I had already paid for all the flights and everything and wasn't able to get my money back. So that was a burden. But yeah, unfortunately, it was right in the middle of a lot of races that were going to happen. But I had to take a step back and just figure out what was going on with me.
Yeah, for sure. So that your story, thanks for sharing that, but it sounds very similar to what a lot of us are going through right now. Things are changing super drastically. All of a sudden we have packed schedules in school and work, and then it all stops. So as you're now feeling healthier again and able to train more, um, how is quarantine? How are you doing with quarantine? How are you training during quarantine? And how did you also get your fitness back up and recover and everything?
A very, very good question. So to start with kind of the quarantine, so I guess I don't even know how many weeks it's been now. Maybe BC has been for maybe 12 weeks. That might be approximately for when they kind of shut down. So even though the government regulations allowed people in BC to be outside, to stay active, the Olympic Committee, both international and the Canadian one, their policies were to tell the centers, like the national federations, to not allow their athletes to train outside and to self-isolate, stay inside, try to do everything to also do our part in staying away. So what this meant, I mean, although the pools were closed, this meant like no swimming. It meant no running unless other athletes had a treadmill, which in my case, I did not. So for me, I was biking on my trainer a lot. Definitely built up fitness as well. And along with this, I have to give a lot of respect to my coaches because they created a way that we could stay connected through our Zoom calls. So every morning, my swim coach, he still holds what we do with pole bands, which is like a band, and we go through some different neuromuscular firing exercises and some workouts to just stimulate the swimming muscles that we would be using in the pool, which is kind of nice too, that we get to see everyone and the team and be a little bit more socially connected.
Yeah, for sure.
And as well, my strength coach, he has come up with a home gym program. So we go through that 3 times a week, and sometimes we'll do them on Zoom. So we also get the social interaction of our team. So that's been keeping me in that way kind of busy, like just that's how quarantine kind of started. And then as the policies of the Olympic committees were kind of lowering a little bit, being more flexible, I think it's been a couple, maybe 3 weeks now where they've prescribed coaches to allow my team to train outside. So I'm back to running, biking outside. And the nice thing about being in Victoria is that it's very warm and the lakes are now swimming temperature. So we get the very big luxury of swimming in a lake, even though the pools are still closed. But it's definitely a huge benefit of being out west for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry to jump around a bit. I skipped a little bit of the story, but I was just wondering, when would you say you started to build back your strength and you started to recover more and get back to normal training? What was the timeline for that like for you?
Oh yes, I didn't answer that. So I think so before I came back to training, I sat down with my coach and I was like, hey, listen, I don't know what's going to happen to my body. I don't know if I'm going to be successful. I don't know if I'm going to crash and burn and be worse than before. Like, this is an open field. It is a playing game. So let's see if we can get this right. I told him, like, I haven't been doing anything for the past 4 months. We had to kind of go back and look at the possibilities of why this could have happened. But we came up with a plan of just very, very slow integration, not being thrown back into training, because I would just be setting myself up for failure. So we took a very big step back, kind of like training every second day. And once that was okay, and like doing a little bit more and a little bit more, and, you know, increasing the duration of some of the disciplines. But in all of that, my fitness came back fairly quickly. So I remember thinking, after I had been back for 3 months, I was feeling like fairly fit, like putting up some good times in the pool. Like, it came back fairly quickly, actually. So I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I was very scared in this time, though. Like, I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to kind of train again, especially with triathlon. There are quite a few high performance athletes who have been in my position who have not been able to come back to train, which I think was the scary thing, because I know these people, and hearing how devastating it was for them to physically not be able to do something that they wanted to do was so daunting to me. But I've been really lucky to just play my cards right and have been successful so far, at least, of being able to like train completely. And now I'm back to a completely normal schedule, and have been for quite a few months now.
Yeah, that's great. So, how long were you able to train normally before the isolation and lockdown started happening?
So I'm trying to think. At this point, that would have been like March. So what a normal week would have been, maybe in like the 20 to 25 hour range, probably more around like 20 at that time. So,
Okay.
like swimming every day, running, biking, maybe somewhere in there, like 3 times a week for gym. So it was a very just not like completely built up yet, but we were like increasing into the point of the summer training and just like really hitting that hard. So we were kind of in a starting to build stage.
Yeah, so with that starting to build up again and everything, how did you stay motivated? Was it tough to stay motivated when all of a sudden you weren't able to get out with your team or to the pools or anything? Or have you just found yourself being wanting to train? Like, has it been tough to stay motivated while you're only able to train at home?
Yeah, so there's definitely a little bit of a balance that had to come into play. So it was kind of interesting. I don't know if this was planned, but right before the Olympic Committee told my coach to tell the athletes that we can't train outside, we actually performed a 20-minute bike test. So you just go as hard as you can for 20 minutes and see your average power. And this test just gets repeated to see if your fitness increases. So we did this test the day before we were told to be inside. And my coach told us, okay, so we're going to retest this in 8 weeks. So he kind of gave us an 8-week goal. So while we were in complete lockdown isolation, we were given a purpose to be getting on the bike. It wasn't that, we were getting on for an unknown race season, or just for no reason. So it really helped having that goal in mind, is this is why I am getting on, is in 8 weeks we're going to retest this, so I better be better in it. And so that was a huge part, I think, of that type of motivation. I find that whenever motivation is a little bit lacking, it's very helpful to think of maybe like my bigger goals, or to kind of remember that, you know what, even though I can't maybe see them, my teammates are also doing this. You know, we can't be accountable for each other because we're not showing up at the same time, but we're all doing this. You know, if I'm feeling maybe unmotivated, I'm not the only one. So just
Yeah,
realize
for
that
sure.
it's
So
not,
yeah,
yeah.
sorry, setting goals and having accountability with people and teammates, that's really important. Great. Is there anything else you want to add about your experience with training during quarantine or with your athlete burnout story? Is there anything else you felt like you need to add?
You know, I think I covered quite a bit. One thing that I will touch on, just because I was going back looking at the reasons why this could have happened, is to do a lot of self-monitoring, especially when you are increasing the mileage or your hours per week. And you know, it is okay to maybe like not do a session if you're really, really pushing it. And also how big of a factor nutrition plays, not only with your ability to perform, but your long run health, and making sure that you do not burn out by deficiting calories, especially on purpose. And I think just simpler things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your story. Now, my final question is not to do with that at all. I was just wondering, what else has been keeping you sane during quarantine? Have you found any new hobbies or talking to people on the phone? What's kind of been your escape?
That is a very good question. I was getting really good at watching Netflix. I spent a lot of my time outside of the training. I decided that that was not maybe the best use of my time. So I have enrolled in 2 classes just to knock those out. Gives me a lot of, you know, fills my time a lot actually. They're more condensed classes, so it's quite a bit of material to go through. Another thing I do enjoy doing is actually going through TED Talks, and, you know, nothing in particular, but just hearing just people's opinions and what they like to share, and some of the sciences that I would have no idea are even out there right now. Just a
Yeah.
different kind of opinion. Let me think of what else I've been doing. That probably sums it up a lot. Napping. I do enjoy napping quite a bit, so lots of time to do that as well. But
Nice.
yeah, it hasn't been too much, just kind of staying around the house, finding things to just fill the time, really.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a good time to be, doing all your Netflix marathons and napping. I can't say I can really nap. I'm not really a napper, but I have been fitting in my fair share of movie marathons. But
Yes.
oh yeah, for sure. It's a really good time. But thank you so much for joining us, Laurin. I really enjoyed chatting with you. Um, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed listening to Laurin chat about her story, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much.